liked Anthony Hopkins.
Right, he was very good. And I thought that the direction of that movie was just incredible.
Sensational.
Beauty and the Beast.
Al likes the animated stuff.
Right.
Tonight on NBC Nightly News, Tom Brokaw has the latest economic figures and how the candidates plan to spend your tax dollars. We'll see you at 11 o'clock.
Good night.
This has been a presentation of News 4 New York.
President Bush says he got the message. He'll roll up his sleeves and fight Pat Buchanan, the self-styled outsider who today returned home to Washington, D.C.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Reporting tonight from NBC News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. There are new numbers out of the New Hampshire Republican presidential primary tonight. The original network projection showed challenger Pat Buchanan getting 40% to the president's 58%. But now, the New Hampshire Secretary of State says the final count is lower for both men as a result of write-ins. 37% for Buchanan, 53% for the president, which means 10% of the New Hampshire Republican voters didn't want either. And as NBC's John Cochran tells us tonight, the president did get the message. John?
Tom, the president said today he realizes the people of New Hampshire are upset about the economy. But as for himself, he is relying on the power of positive thinking. He has declared his win a landslide. All's well that ends well in the view of a president who admitted he felt better after late returns came in showing his lead had increased.
A lot different than I heard some of you guys talking about earlier last evening when I admit I was a little tense. A little tense, John, with a couple of reports I heard there.
But the results were close enough for the Bush camp to overhaul its strategy, scheduling more trips like this one to Tennessee, one of the states up for grabs in 3 weeks on Super Tuesday. The Buchanan threat has also pressured Bush into violating his party's golden rule. Thou wilt speak no evil of a Republican.
We might have to define the opponent. I've been very kind and gentle. I'll still be kind, and I'm now debating how gentle to be.
Not gentle enough to ignore a newspaper column Buchanan wrote in 1983 asking, why not make Social Security voluntary? Buchanan suggested that Social Security taxes are unfair to blacks because they don't live long enough to get back what they pay out. The Bush campaign dug up the article and Bush offered this comment.
Well, I don't think Social Security ought to be voluntary. That's the Bush position. Well, people go ask him what he thinks about it.
Buchanan said he does not remember suggesting changes in Social Security.
You know, I think Social Security system is not going to be touched or changed by anybody. Everybody knows that. Good heavens, I don't know what I wrote 27 years ago. They may be digging through the files.
And after today, everybody knows the president's answer to Buchanan's request for a televised debate. The president wants no part of a debate which would elevate Buchanan's status while also giving the former television commentator a chance to show off his debating skills. Tom?
Thank you, John. Outside of Buchanan's inner circle, maybe even including that inner circle, no one really believes this pugnacious challenger can take the Republican nomination away from the president. But as NBC's Lisa Myers reports, Buchanan does think that he's right on course.
The man born, raised, educated, and living in Washington returned home as the conquering outsider.
Have you all seen this newspaper by any chance?
The verdict in New Hampshire was primarily a vote against Bush. The challenge for Buchanan now is to give voters reasons to be for him.
There are 13 primaries, I believe, in the next 3 weeks. And Mr. Bush is about to deploy all the king's horses and all the king's men to defeat us.
Buchanan will continue to preach Reaganomics, which he claims Bush abandoned. He wants bigger middle-class tax cuts, a big cut in the capital gains tax, a freeze on federal spending, and a rollback of federal regulations. The next big test, Georgia, where Buchanan will play to the Bubba factor. He'll try to get white Democrats to vote in the Republican primary by pounding the president for signing a civil rights bill.
I think it promotes quotas, which are reverse discrimination.
In Georgia and later in South Carolina, he'll also hit hard on the trade issue.
I would tell the Japanese, I don't care if you sell your supercomputers for 10 cents in the United States, you're going to buy one in your country for every one you sell in the USA.
In Texas, Buchanan hopes to capitalize on resentment over illegal immigration, proposing a big fence between Mexico and the United States. Buchanan has money to compete, but
he can tap frustration with the president. He can't present himself as an alternative president.
not even Buchanan's friends give him a prayer of winning the Republican nomination. What he can do is continue to damage the president. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
And guess who got the most Republican write-in votes in New Hampshire? The new Democratic frontrunner, Paul Tsongas. Unconventional, unlikely, and formidable. NBC's Andrea Mitchell tonight.
Do I think I'm the heavyweight?
Suddenly, it's a real campaign with a traveling press corps, its own airplane, and a candidate trying to look like a traditional politician. Worried about jobs and the economy, New Hampshire voted for plain talk. The need for private investment, not government spending. No tax cuts that increase the deficit. All explained not in slick TV ads, but in a book.
We had a choice in New Hampshire, buy TV or publish 200,000 copies of that book. We decided to do the book rather than the TV, and it paid off.
It was one thing to sell that message in small, hard-pressed New Hampshire, where he could commute from his home in Massachusetts. Now Tsongas has to go national. First stop, Maryland, where he must win the primary 2 weeks from now. A much more diverse state, but he delivered the same aggressively pro-business message.
So what are Democrats talking about? A middle-class tax cut. How do you compete with Japan by giving somebody 97 cents a day?
Those ideas are completely out of step with congressional Democrats. Today, they downplayed Tsongas' chances of getting the nomination.
What will happen in terms of the outcome is not necessarily what happened in New Hampshire.
Encouraged by his strong second-place finish in New Hampshire, Bill Clinton headed to his home base, where he hopes to clobber Tsongas in the upcoming Southern primaries.
It's wonderful to be back in a place where I am the only candidate without an accent.
Clinton's message today was a straight appeal to the middle class.
For 10 years now, we have seen in our country middle-class people work longer hours a week for lower pay to pay more for the necessities of life.
Clinton has plenty of money and some big-name endorsements. But in the red, white, and blue South, he's carrying some heavy political baggage, his anti-war past. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Since this campaign is almost entirely about the economy, the president was probably heartened to see housing starts up today, 5.5% last month, and there was some encouraging news about inflation as well. NBC's chief financial correspondent Mike Jensen is here tonight to tell us what it all means. Michael?
Tom, there are signs that we may be starting to come out of this recession, but it's painfully slow and very iffy. The economy fell into a deep hole, and it's a matter of trying to climb out of it a half inch at a time. The best news of the day was housing starts. More new construction than we've seen in a year and a half. But it was mostly in the Midwest and mostly apartment buildings.
Remarkably enough, we've had quite an influx of people coming in lately. A lot of people are coming in for the slower months, normally January, February, and they're pre-leasing for spring.
The other good news today was that prices are very stable. With the economy so sluggish, there's hardly any inflation. A lot of food prices actually fell in January. Things like fruit and vegetables and eggs.
I feel very good about it because I do a lot of shopping and a lot of cooking.
Gasoline prices also went down, about 2 cents a gallon. Even used car prices fell a bit. Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan sees a stronger economy.
The board members and Reserve Bank presidents expect a moderate upturn in economic activity during 1992.
To help things along, the Fed made it a bit easier for banks to lend money by lowering the amount they have to keep in reserve for hard times. Bankers said thanks, but don't expect too much.
The real problem is not that people can't get the money, it's that people just don't want to take on more debt.
People also are slow to open their pocketbooks for good reason. Earnings of the average American, adjusted for inflation, fell 0.7% in January, mainly because people worked fewer hours. So while there is some good news, it's nothing to write home about. The economy is very fragile, and it certainly wouldn't take much to send it back into a tailspin. Tom?
Thanks, Mike. When Nightly News continues in a moment, a fertility doctor on trial for using his own sperm for clients. And Warren Beatty's Bugsy. It's been struggling at the box office, but today it hit a bonanza called Oscar.
If you're looking for a great vacation, I've got just the place. In the morning, in the evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh, but honey, ain't we got fun? The food is great here, there's never a bill. We'll stay up late, dear, let's not miss a thrill. Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
Nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay with added power. It's the strongest Bengay ever. Fast relief for muscle aches and minor arthritis pain. With new Ultra Strength Bengay, you can say goodnight to your pain.
It could start in your office, in your home, over lunch. But now, wherever heartburn starts, this is where it ends. Introducing new Maalox Heartburn Relief Formula. No ordinary antacid works like this one to put out heartburn.
Dow Corning was on the defensive again today about its silicone breast implants, this time before an FDA advisory board. It disputed claims that the implants often break after insertion. It said that many were ruptured before or during the operations to install them. What kind of doctor would impregnate female patients with his own sperm or trick them into believing that they were pregnant when they were not? A trial now going on in Virginia will try to determine if Cecil Jacobson is such a doctor. NBC's Lee Thompson, who first broke this story, has more tonight.
Dr. Cecil Jacobson ran a fertility clinic in Northern Virginia until 1989, when a medical board shut him down. Now he faces multiple criminal counts of being the fraudulent biological father of at least 75 children. Jacobson is charged with using his own sperm to artificially inseminate his patients. They say the doctor told them his donors were medical or seminary students. One woman, using a false name to protect her child, testified she and her husband realized Jacobson must be the father because their baby looks just like him. Other charges in this case involve Jacobson's use of the hormone HCG that made women look and feel pregnant when they were not. Patient after patient has testified Jacobson would do repeated sonograms and circle what he said was their baby. They said he told them, God doesn't give you babies, I do. They also say 9 to 10 weeks into each pregnancy, he would tell them their babies had died and would be absorbed back into their bodies. Numerous doctors have testified saying that can't happen that late in pregnancy. Debbie Gregory told the jury this week and NBC in 1988 that when she was supposedly pregnant for the third time, she went to see another doctor.
He said, "You're not pregnant." And I said, "What do you mean? You mean the baby has died?" And he said, "No, you're not pregnant."
Dr. Jacobson's defense will be that he occasionally used his own sperm because he believes fresh semen works better than frozen. If Jacobson is found guilty on all counts, he faces over 250 years in jail and nearly $500,000 in fines. Lee Thompson, NBC News, Alexandria, Virginia.
A controversial affirmative action ruling was released today in a case heard by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas when he was still on the appeals court. The government may not give special preference to women in awarding broadcasting licenses. The opinion, written by Thomas on the Supreme Court, says that doing so discriminates against men.
When I see my mother hurting, it really hurts me. She buys store brands for some things, but when it comes to pain relievers, I'm glad she still uses Advil. I trust it, and I know it helps.
Here, Mom.
Ah, thanks. Now I'll feel better. What's this?
Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
Evidently, some people have money to burn. Why else would they pay an outrageous fee to carry a simple credit card? when they could carry the Discover card, the card that charges no annual fee, yet pays cash back on every charge, which means it puts money into your pocket. Instead of burning a hole in it pays to Discover.
I'd like to talk to you about an invisible problem. The invisible bacteria that cause denture odor. Fortunately, antibacterial Effident kills those odor-causing bacteria for clean, fresh dentures.
Antibacterial Effident.
I've got a 6 a.m. flight. I've got to get some Z's.
Nitol safely helps you fall asleep fast so you can get your Z's. Nitol or Maximum Strength Nitol.
Nitol will help you get your Z's.
Our daily difference now, vital signs. A House subcommittee today looked at problems in a growing and lucrative field of medical care, treating people with severe head injuries. There are abuses to report. NBC's medical correspondent Robert Bazell looks at the biggest company in this field.
Danielle Stento is slowly learning to sing again. A collision with a drunk driver left her with a severe brain injury. Danielle's parents put her into a facility run by the New Medico Corporation, which specializes in head injury treatment.
The New Medico head injury system offers a continuum of care.
While some people are satisfied with New Medico's care, the Stentos were not.
We were promised that she would have whatever she had in the hospital available to her there. That did not happen. There weren't monitors, they didn't even have an ice mattress for the high temps that she was experiencing. What I feel is that we were used and abused by big business.
Charles Brennick runs New Medico as a big, lucrative family business. Papers obtained by NBC News show that the company grossed $250 million in 1989, and that Brennick drew a salary of over $1 million from just one of New Medico's 36 facilities. Dr. Kenneth Holscher was a physician at New Medico.
They have beds, they want to fill them. An empty bed is lost money. A filled bed is revenue. And if there are empty beds, heads roll.
New Medico's sales teams try to fill the beds through promotional videotapes and high-pressure sales tactics.
Our dedication to a higher quality of life comes from a unique understanding and approach to head injury rehabilitation.
What drove the decision to admit or to discharge a patient?
In my estimation, money. If they had coverage and there was any way they could justify the admission, the patient would come in.
And what about staying there? How long would they stay?
That, again, would often, in my estimation, depend upon how many days or weeks or months their insurance company would pay for.
And there was no guarantee that patients would get what they were billed for, even when the charges exceeded $1,000 a day.
Wayne John? Well, when it's for profit, it gets to be nothing but a greed business.
Midge DiMartino's son, Wayne John Lamar, suffered severe brain injury when he was hit by a car as he crossed a street 3 years ago. His family took him to the New Medico facility in Cortland, New York.
Try.
New Medico took these pictures of Wayne John. Mrs. DiMartino says the tape was intended to exaggerate his improvement.
Bring your head forward for me. Very good. Excellent.
Wayne John's care cost $960 a day, and his mother says it wasn't worth it. Once the DiMartinos made a surprise visit.
And I for some reason, lifted up the sheet, and he laid in feces. And it was from his knees all the way up his back, and it was dried on him. And the nurses all came in, and when they went to clean him up, they took his boxer shorts off him. They ripped his skin. It took 4 aides to clean him up.
Former employees told NBC News that it was common practice at New Medico for untrained, unlicensed employees to administer care. Then patients or their insurance companies would be billed for professional services. Dr. David Barris was a consultant to New Medico in Florida.
Patients would be seen in a therapeutic environment. Exercises would be performed, but it was not done by a certified physical therapist. And the therapist would then be requested to sign off on that particular activity, even though they may not have been there or actually saw the patient that day.
Brennick has declined to be interviewed by NBC News about the operation of his facilities.
Well, I'd like to talk to your lawyer.
While the state and federal investigations are continuing, Congress is considering a bill calling for stricter regulation of the care of head injury victims. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Washington.
In a moment, more news and John Chancellor's commentary.
I like a really big, round burger.
And I like them really, really thick.
You got a baseball.
Smells come up and the juices drip down. I can almost hear it.
By the sound, just by the sound, then I know it's ready.
Whoa.
Wait.
It's not done.
Done. Ah, it's done.
No, it's done.
A1. It's how burgers are.
Perfect.
Done.
It's gone. But it isn't.
Introducing an incredible Vicks cough drop like you've never known before.
It's gone, but it's still working.
A cough drop so powerful, it keeps on working even after it's gone.
It's still working.
All new Extra Strength Vicks. Extra strength with twice the Vicks vapor medicine to relieve your cough and help your scratchy throat and stuffy nose feel better. So try new Extra Strength Vicks. Extra strong to work even after the drop is gone.
It's still working.
Oh no, my hair's not only going gray, now it's getting thinner. I wish they made something for gray thinning hair.
They have Grecian Plus. Grecian Plus is a fresh-smelling foam that gradually brings back natural-looking color, the famous Grecian way. But this Grecian has a big plus. It builds body for healthier, fuller-looking hair.
Your hair looks great. Feels thicker, too.
Grecian Plus, the total treatment for gray thinning hair.
Because some aches and pains don't go away when the lights go out, we've created Tylenol PM. Specially formulated with extra strength Tylenol pain reliever for those aches and pains that can keep you up at night. Plus a gentle ingredient to help you sleep. So you can wake up refreshed in the morning. From the name you trust comes Tylenol PM, so you can rest easy.
Ukrainian President Leonid Kravchuk turned up the heat again today on Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Kravchuk said talks with the United States on cutting nuclear arms should involve all former republics that have nuclear weapons, not just Russia. In South Africa, an election setback today for the ruling National Party and its reform policies. The conservative candidate who opposes sharing power with the black majority in South Africa won a seat long held by the National Party. John Chancellor is here with commentary tonight on New Hampshire, not just about this year, but what happens in the future.
Tom, here is the New Hampshire presidential curse. For the last 40 years, presidential candidates have been running in the New Hampshire primary, and in all those years, no sitting president has ever been re-elected who did not get at least 63% of his party's vote. Yesterday, George Bush got 53%. The curse may not work this year because we're dealing with the president who said, "I will do whatever I have to do to be re-elected." He means it, and Pat Buchanan knows he means it. The odds are overwhelming that George Bush will win the nomination. Buchanan can live with that. He already has won a big prize, a claim to leadership of the conservative movement and a chance for the Republican presidential nomination in 1996. Others want that nomination: Dan Quayle, Jack Kemp, Dick Cheney, Jim Baker. Now they've got to reckon with Buchanan, who carried the conservative banner to New Hampshire and rattled the president's cage. A president who never did win the hearts and minds of the Republican conservatives. Unless there is some kind of miracle, Buchanan should be out of the race in a few weeks. He doesn't want to be a spoiler. Besides, this year does not give him his best shot at the presidency. 1996 does. He'll be 57 years old. The Republican presidential nomination very likely will be up for grabs, and Buchanan will go for it. What he did in New Hampshire yesterday will make it much easier. Tom?
Thank you, John. On Wall Street today, the Dow Industrials were up a bit, and trading was heavy today.
A cold always starts small, but before you know it, your cold is full grown. That's when you need Dimetap. If it was any stronger, you'd need a prescription. Dimetap Extend tabs work for 12 full hours. It's the way to relieve the congestion and sneezing of a full-grown cold.
Maximum strength Dymatap Extend tabs. Relief for the full-grown cold. And for colds and flu with fever, now there's Dymatap Cold and Flu.
Kids love my ice cream. Had to take their word for it. Meet the ice cream man who couldn't eat ice cream. So you want 2 scoops or 1 scoop? Funny, huh? Same trouble digesting milk, cheese. Made my stomach nuts. Anyway, that was before dairies. I just chew some tablets and eat what I want. That's opened up a whole new world for me. How's it taste? Good.
Royal Caribbean, paradise surrounds me. There's no place like this on land. All my cares, they're behind me. The world's in my command.
One cruise line has been named best in passenger satisfaction 10 years in a row. Royal Caribbean, the grand resorts of the 7 seas.
Royal Caribbean.
Before we made a driver's minivan airbag standard in the Plymouth Voyager and the Dodge Caravan, we tested it. We did the same with our available all-wheel drive and ABS brakes. And now, for 1992, Chrysler introduces the world's first built-in, fold-away child seat. And for this latest achievement, we'd like to thank all the little people who made it possible.
A big day in Hollywood. The Oscar nominations were announced. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences always emphasizes the art and the science. But as NBC's Keith Morrison tells us tonight, surprise, it's mostly about money.
So today the other campaign began. Just about as crazy as the one the politicians run, complete with little faux pas.
Mercedes rule in the Kingfisher.
He meant Fisher King, of course.
And finally, I'm pleased
Finally, that's me. I'm pleased to announce.
Good.
Hollywood's annual race for the Oscars, always a festival of hucksterism, has taken on some desperation this year.
Well, it becomes so slick after a while that you lose the art form of it.
Oscar voter Marty Ingalls has been flooded with outrageously expensive junk mail. Hollywood's effort to jumpstart big, flashy, money-losing movies.
All of that. Hook did nothing right. Even this book cost more money than you make in 30 years of your lifetime. Their only hope for getting ahead financially was if they got an award.
Even Bugsy, nominated for 10 awards, more than any other movie.
Bugsy, is only up to $39 million. It's on the way down again. There's going to be some big losses this year.
And so they campaigned. Today, Warren Beatty sat for an interview with Katie Couric for tomorrow's Today Show.
An Academy Award nomination translates into lots more attention.
Maybe. What you try not to do is think about just the money on every movie you make,
But obviously somebody thinks about the money. So much so that some Oscar voters are contemplating a little rebellion, something quite different this year.
Beauty and the Beast is a dark horse that everybody thinks is going to come forward and win, for the first time, an animated movie.
Best Picture for an animation? If it wins, it will be for the sake of creativity, which Hollywood may have been lacking lately.
She's the one. She has come to break the spell.
Keith Morrison, NBC News, Hollywood.
I wonder why I didn't see.
That's nightly news for this Wednesday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Is it true that Harry Greenberg was going to testify against all your friends?
Celebrate the 100th episode of Unsolved Mysteries with 2 incredible hours of amazing new stories. A special Unsolved Mysteries, NBC, tonight.
Tomorrow morning, the stars come out on Today. Actors Warren Beatty and Annette Bening talk for the first time about being new parents.
Also, Grammy Award winner Whitney Houston, who's thrilled about her first film role with actor Kevin Costner.
Yeah, it's not bad, huh?
And Golden Girl Estelle Getty on her new movie with Sylvester Stallone.
Join us tomorrow morning on Today.
The Olympic Games feature our nation's best. And now your Jeep and Eagle dealers are featuring theirs during the Jeep and Eagle National Drive for the Gold sale. Get a Jeep Cherokee with package discounts and cash back. An Eagle Talon with terrific savings. or an Eagle Summit wagon with air at no charge. So see your dealer and drive for the gold today. It's the perfect way to celebrate all our nation's best.
That cough sounds bad.
When her little patient is coughing, it's the biggest thing on Mom's mind. That's why there's Robitussin Pediatric. Great tasting cough and cold relief, formulated just for kids, from the brand more doctors and pharmacists recommend. Robitussin Pediatric gives long-lasting cough relief day or night, so both the patient and the doctor can rest comfortably. Robitussin Pediatric Cough and new cough and cold formula, recommended by Dr. Mom.
Granny Dumping, tonight at 11 on Channel 4.
Hello, New York. Today for our nation's capital, a sex storm on the Hill and a drunken scandal in the skies. You're flying at 30,000 feet, but how high is your pilot?
I said I was sorry, and I am sorry. This was a unique situation.
Some have already killed, and many others are still taking your life into their shaking hands. Now it can be told, straight up or on the rocks. It's a deadly cocktail. Cockpit cowboys, flying high.
I was very uncomfortable with the idea and told him so.
It started with one hill and moved to another one.
Came in and purposely looked right down at my breasts and said, yes, they look good, don't they?
Sexual warfare explodes under the dome with the Congressional Women's Uprising.
I think the women in Congress are angry.
Now it can be told, Prudence and the Hill. Censored scenes from the forbidden life of Washington's latest bad girl.
We're talking about down and dirty, leave nothing to the imagination, porno movies.
Would you believe this woman was an aide to one of Capitol Hill's most conservative, most pious senators? Now it can be told, naughty Missy Manners. Welcome back to Washington, everybody. I'm Geraldo Rivera, and I'll be telling you about the connection between the pious senator and the porn star a bit later in the program. But up front today, a story that could give you a well-grounded fear of flying. You may recall 2 years ago when a Northwest Airlines flight crew was arrested for flying drunk. Well, our chief investigative correspondent, Roberta Baskin, is out at Washington's National Airport to show us just how easily that can happen.
It's been a tragedy in many ways.
I said I was sorry, and I am sorry. This was a unique situation. This is not something that happens every day.
What happened on that day in March 1990 is that a Northwest pilot and flight crew risked the lives of 58 passengers by flying a plane while intoxicated. When he landed safely in Minneapolis, Captain Lyle Prowse had a blood alcohol level 3 times higher than federal rules permit, a level equivalent to 8 mixed drinks. Not surprisingly, since bills at this Fargo, North Dakota bar show he'd put away 19 rum and cokes the night before. He was arrested, sentenced, publicly humiliated.
One of the spin-offs of this terrible experience that the three of us have been through is to alert pilots that they need to be more aware of this.
But now it can be told that experts in treating alcoholism among pilots already knew Northwest Airlines was risking disaster because it was the last major airline to set up a program to help pilots stop drinking. Addiction specialist Joseph Persh has treated hundreds of alcoholic pilots, and he refused to fly Northwest.
It was easy to predict that they would have a calamity because they had no program. They were laboring under the delusion that if you don't allow alcoholism in your company, there won't be any.
Psychiatrist Maxwell Weissman has worked extensively with the Federal Aviation Administration.
Frankly, I refused to fly with Northwest because it was a risk I didn't want to take. There was always the danger, without a program, that there was an alcoholic pilot in the cockpit who had recently had a drink or may have had a miniature in his pocket.
Northwest Airlines declined to comment. Studies done 5 years ago proved it doesn't take much 2 to 2.5 drinks to incapacitate a pilot.
No, I can't feel my cheeks.
In 1986, I watched pilot volunteers at a California research facility try to operate a flight simulator with blood alcohol levels much lower than the Northwest pilots.
Okay, are we ready? You ready? I can't even talk. How can I fly? Whoops. Oh, jeez. Oh, carburetor ice. It was a little harder.
How well do you think you did?
And the landing was really great.
Okay.
Oh, oil pressure.
Thank you. Yes, you landed without any oil pressure.
Well, you know, that's an added feature.
You did get it at the
Sorry,
end.
I just noticed that. Sorry about that.
When flight conditions grew rockier, so did their performance.
Turn on your seatbelts.
I can't tell if I went around twice or not.
I had to concentrate more, but I think overall I did well.
That sobers you up once you get climbing through the air.
But what really sobered them up were their miserable test results.
These are the acceptable margins here. And this is an ideal, this line right here, an ideal approach. And you can see that he was outside of an acceptable range throughout most of his descent to landing. And he wasn't aware of that during his flight.
But too many pilots learned the lesson the hard way. Charles Vizdak died when he crashed his cargo plane into the Tennessee mountains after drinking 13 12-ounce beers. He'd been convicted 7 times for drunk driving.
This is his driving record. It's the worst driving record that I've seen.
It's estimated that up to 30% of all pilots involved in fatal crashes caused by pilot error have alcohol in their blood. To combat this, federal computers are searching for drunk driving convictions among the nation's 670,000 pilots.
The federal government study isn't yet complete, and it's already found more than 5,500 pilots with drunk driving convictions. Most fly private planes, but 400 work for airlines. Northwest pilots had the highest number of drunk driving convictions. Ironically, Northwest had finally begun a treatment program for alcoholic pilots just before its 3 pilots were arrested for intoxication.
Alcohol recovery programs for pilots have a stunning 90% success rate.
I promised myself that I would never let that happen to me, that I would never become an alcoholic.
And yet, how much were you drinking?
I was drinking a quart a day.
Alan is a pilot for a major airline and one of 1,300 recovering alcoholic pilots. Birds of a Feather, an alcoholic pilot support group, recently invited us to attend their national meeting just outside Washington.
I had several incidents where I flew with a hangover.
John, a retired executive pilot, is a recovering alcoholic. So is Bill, a private pilot, who asked us to conceal his identity. His instructor once warned him he was too hungover to fly.
Definitely. In his opinion, I was not to be flying that airplane. We turned around and went back down.
Were you all over the sky?
I assume so.
You don't even know, for sure.
No, I don't know. I'm telling you truthfully, I thought that I had made a perfect takeoff and a perfect exit from the pattern, etc., etc.
Did the hangover make it difficult to do the
very
job?
Very difficult, yes, very difficult. That was... however, it didn't... I did it, but it was... I could have done it a lot better had I not been under the influence of a hangover.
The Federal Aviation Administration's bottle-to-throttle rule says no drinking 8 hours before a flight. But a recent study in the New England Journal of Medicine found that pilots should wait at least 12 hours, and their blood alcohol levels should be almost 0 before they take off.
Do we still have a ways to go?
Oh, yes, we have a ways to go because the number of pilots who are recovered is far smaller than the number of pilots who are alcoholic and still flying.
Back down to earth, Roberta joins me now on the steps, actually, of the Lincoln Memorial. Everybody, I hope you can hear me over the roar of the jet plane. You know, Roberta, seriously, I don't know how comfortable I would feel flying with a pilot who admitted that he was a drunk.
Geraldo, I would feel so much more comfortable flying with a pilot who's a recovering alcoholic than a pilot who doesn't admit that he has a problem. And the recovery rates among airlines are 90% when pilots get into a program because they want to fly. They want to get back to work and get back to their life, and so it's really much safer.
Now, what's this so-called bottle-to-throttle rule right now?
Well, it's 8 hours bottle to throttle, but the experts say that that's not enough, that it should be more like 24 hours under certain circumstances. And then the blood alcohol level in pilots, it's 0.04, and the experts say that that's 4 times too high.
I know that in my wilder days, after tying one on, it took me a lot longer than 8 hours to sober up.
That's what you saw in the flight simulator. In fact, those drunk pilots thought that they were doing much better than in fact they were, and that's what the alcohol does.
Roberta, thanks.
Okay.
Now from a battle with the bottle to a battle with some beasts over on Capitol Hill. Stay tuned. Women like these are joining forces and declaring war on politicos who get too close for comfort.
We know that sexual harassment happens.
That's next. And later, naughty Missy Manners. She's the baddest girl in Washington, and her boss is the most embarrassed senator on the Hill.
Broadway dancing, it's as physical as you can get. You don't stop, you don't sit, you work hard, you sweat. New lady power. It works. You can dance and then still hug your friends and be okay.
New lady power from Fabergé. It won't let you down.
Shower yourself with a new sensation. New refreshing Shield. Feel the blast. The high-energy beat of Shield's unique skin-vigorating formula. Refreshment that'll turn you around. New refreshing Shield.
That's me. Me again. Bullseye. Guess you could say I'm a magnet for stains. And each one meant money down the drain. Until I discovered new Ultra Dash.
New Ultra Dash packs an extra stain-fighting ingredient that can power out some of the toughest stains. But it doesn't cost a fortune.
Maybe I ought to tell them about Dash.
New Ultra Dash. It cleans a mess for less.
Tonight, celebrate the 100th episode of Unsolved Mysteries with a special 2-hour event filled with the biggest new cases of the year, including this close encounter with a UFO and a real-life ghost story that will haunt you. 2 incredible hours of amazing new stories. It's the 100th episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Then, if you don't know why they're screaming, meet TV heartthrob Luke Perry, plus the bare facts about Michael Douglas.
You're naked in the movie, Michael.
Tonight on First Person.
Toyota dealers are cutting deals like never before. With savings in their biggest Toyota selection ever. Tear into a Toyota 4x2 and get up to $850 in option package savings. Save on Toyota 4x4. Up to $850 in option package savings on America's most popular compact 4x4. Carve out your deal at financing now. It's cutting deals days, but hurry before all these great deals are cut. That's what I've been saying all along.
President James Madison once said that if men were angels, government would not be necessary. And that may be true. But the men in government these days, as we've all discovered, are certainly no angels themselves.
Are you a scorned woman?
As they judged the qualifications of Clarence Thomas, the women of Capitol Hill were judging them.
If anything came out of the Clarence Thomas hearings, it's that we need more women in political office.
Female congressional employees questioned whether these men of power, who'd actually exempted themselves from their own laws on sexual harassment, were in fact the best referees in this high-stakes game. Jean Dugan is president of the Capitol Hill Women's Political Caucus.
I think the women in Congress are angry, and probably more angry than most women across America who saw the Anita Hill testimony and didn't believe her. I think here we found her a very credible witness. We know that sexual harassment happens, and the situation that she described is how it often happens in government.
Although the Thomas hearings focused the spotlight on sexual harassment, the nation has often been titillated by other sexual escapades of our elected officials. Some you'll remember, others you've probably forgotten. Item 1976. Congressman Wayne Hayes of Ohio resigns after charges he kept Elizabeth Ray on his payroll for the sole purpose of providing sexual favors. Item 1981. Congressman John Hinson of Mississippi resigns after being arrested for allegedly committing sodomy with a Library of Congress clerk. Item 1983. Congressman Dan Crane of Illinois is censured by the House of Representatives for having sex with a 17-year-old House page. Item 1983. Congressman Jerry Studs of Massachusetts is also censured for having sex with a 17-year-old House page. Item 1990. Congressman Buzz Lukens of Ohio resigns after being convicted of having sex with an underage girl, and a later allegation of fondling a Capitol elevator operator. Item 1989. Congressman Jim Bates of California is found guilty by the House Ethics Committee of having sexually harassed 2 members of his staff. Dorina Bertucci is an outspoken critic of sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. She's one of the women who brought the charges against Jim Bates, charges that ultimately cost him his political career.
Every time he would talk to me, he would visibly stare at my breasts. It wasn't something like it was a casual look and continue. It was one where his eye, ogling, I guess that could be it, the term. But he would constantly do that. He'd make comments about my breasts, saying that they look good. He did this one time in front of a constituent, and I've heard like various stories from him on this line. It's really kind of hysterical. He now is coming out with all these justifications.
After the House Ethics Committee found former Congressman Bates guilty of sexual harassment, it forced him to apologize in writing to Dorina. The letter said, quote, "This happened because of inappropriate behavior on my part. Any discomfort I've caused you, I regret," end quote. But Bates's regret is little comfort to Dorina Bertuzzi.
I've learned a lot about myself, I think, on the positive side, and it's been really, really difficult, and I've had really bad moments where I thought, why, you stupid fool, why did you ever do this? But I really had no choice.
Dorina's choice to come forward was unique on Capitol Hill. Suffering in silence is the traditional way. The Capitol Hill Women's Political Caucus has been battling sexual harassment in Congress for several years now. Its monthly meetings are hotbeds of emotion and frustration.
I've heard a lot of people say that it's pervasive. I would not say that every female staffer has been harassed, but I think there's very few that haven't heard or seen examples of harassment.
I mean, you have bills, and you need food, and you need clothing, and you have necessities you have to pay for, and if it's a choice between, I guess if it's a choice between your pride and your dignity and trying to maintain a standard of living and have a roof over your head, what are you going to choose?
There's no incentive for a woman to come forward, especially in the House or Senate, and press charges, because at most, their harasser is going to get a wrist slap and a little bit of public embarrassment.
You should know that Congress has exempted itself from many of the harassment and discrimination laws that apply to all of the rest of us. One result may be that working women here on Capitol Hill are often the targets of sexual harassment and humiliation. Now the story of another woman who left Capitol Hill in search of another career. We'll be back in a moment with the story of naughty Missy Manners and her senator boss.
You're in an emergency room, but you're not sick or hurt. Your family has left you. They can no longer cope with the frustration and cost of caring for you. It's a rising trend called granny dumping. You won't believe what some people will do. Don't miss our special report, Granny Dumping, tonight at 11 on Channel 4.
I just love sales, don't you? So when my Ford dealers decided to have a sales event pour moi, I said, fabulous. I mean, cash back? What a concept. And talk about value. It doesn't get any better than this. And something nobody else has. 5 of the 10 best-selling cars and trucks in America. All this and me.
Now save on everything during this very special event at your Tri-State Quality Ford dealer.
My own personal sales event. This could really catch on.
Films reflect our culture. So Janine Basinger's students learn how film works. Her story after this. Portrait of a Teacher, brought to you by Campbell's Home Cookin' Soup.
It's good.
It's real good. It's home cooking soup.
It's not hot enough.
No? Well, better let me check. Gee, I'd say perfect. Charlie, what do you say?
Celery and carrots are mighty good.
Well, Stan, how about you? Chicken's delicious. Noodles, too. Golly, Fred, looks like you got nothing to complain about.
Gee, guys, thanks for nothing.
Don't mention it. Our pleasure.
The name is home cooking, and so is the taste from Campbell's.
Frank Capra, Ingrid Bergman, Clint Eastwood have all entrusted their archives to her care. Now Janine's passing that legacy to tomorrow's filmmakers.
I certainly believe that young filmmakers can make films that are as great as any that have ever been made. They have to find their own ways of doing it.
Janine Basinger, one teacher, a world of difference.
The athletic trainers of every major pro sport recommend one pain-relieving gel, Flexall 454. I use it for my kind of pain. And now aloe vera-based Flexall is used almost everywhere. In tennis clubs, backyard gardens, on the golf course, bike paths, road races. Flexall is just about everywhere people suffer from sore muscles and joints. If you're living with pain, join the pro trainers, me and everybody else. Get Flexall, the pain relief pro trainers recommend.
Here's one of those ironic twists that make Washington's gossip mongers lick their lips. Our Gail Anderson exposes the saga of senatorial scandal.
Geraldo, your story on sexual harassment featured the Senate Judiciary Committee's review of Anita Hill's sexual harassment allegations against Clarence Thomas. One member of that Senate panel was Utah conservative Orrin Hatch. He was appalled by Hill's allegations and discussions of Thomas's alleged pornographic tastes. Now it can be told the pornographic tastes of one of Hatch's former aides might be just as appalling. Would you believe the scantily clad young woman seen here worked in Washington, D.C. for Senator Orrin Hatch? Well, she did. Elisa Flores was an aide to the Utah senator. The daughter of a Hatch supporter, Flores was hired in 1981 as a part-time intern. She did her job so well, Hatch wanted her full-time. Flores did general office work, and she's remembered as very hardworking. But Washington gossip columnist Rudy Maxa says the former aide rejected her position with Hatch and her Capitol Hill conservative threads to head west for fame in hot hedonistic XXX movies in which she appears wearing very little.
We're not talking about soft romantic porno movies. We're talking about down and dirty, leave nothing to the imagination porno movies. Missy decided, she worked out, she got her body in shape. I had breakfast with her in San Francisco, and she said, I got my body in shape, I was very proud of my body, I wanted to show it off, and boy, did she.
Now known as Missy Manners, you could call her something of a porno pioneer. She stars in what is described as the first safe-sex hardcore porn flick, Behind the Green Door, the sequel. She insisted the cast use condoms. We can't show you proof of that here, but believe me, they use them. So what does Missy Manners' former boss, Hatch, have to say about his former assistant's sexy stardom? We can't tell you. He wouldn't comment on camera. I wonder why.
I wonder if the senator was trying to recall whether or not he had written Miss Flores a letter of recommendation. In any case, we'll be back in a moment to tell you how the President of the United States picked up on a story that we broke.